A word from our sponsors. Philo Ads brings performance-focused CTV advertising to brands of every size. With over 900 million ad impressions each month, no minimum spend, and a brand-safe environment, Philo Ads makes it easy to scale your campaigns with confidence. Ready to see how Philo Ads can work for you? Head to ads.philo.tv. That's ads.philo.tv to get started today.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome to the Ad Tech Godpod, your window into the world of advertising technology and the people behind it. I'm your host, AdTechGod. Welcome to the Ad Tech Godpod, where we speak with the entrepreneurs in ad tech. Today, we're joined by Taylor Simons, founder and principal consultant at TCHT and advisor to Audigent and others. Prior to this, he worked at MediaMath for nearly 9 years. He has an incredible history in the space, having seen the boom and challenges at his time at MediaMath. I'm looking forward to getting to know Taylor today. Taylor, welcome to the Ad Tech Godpod.
Thank you very much. And I do just want to say thank you for what you're doing. I know a lot of people comment on the positivity you create in a space, which is certainly true. But I did want to call out, I think fondly back to especially the early days. It almost felt reminiscent of going to the office on a Monday after, an episode of Game of Thrones where everyone's talking about it. Who is AdTechGod? Do you see this? I think he lives in the West Coast. Do you know who he is? And it's been awesome to watch. It's just fun.
It's been fun. It's been fun to be a part of it. I don't know how it got to this point, but to be honest, Taylor, I love it. It's fun. I still enjoy it. I think I'm busier than I was before. It was just more of a hobby, but I really enjoy it. I also get to meet awesome people like you and others, which is great because I don't know if I would have met you prior to this. Who knows? Or maybe we've met.
Maybe.
Taylor, looking at your time at MediaMath, looking at, starting up TCHT, I would love to hear about how you got into the space, and then we can kind of move towards the journey and how your perspective differs sitting as a consultant across a multitude of clients. So I'd love to hear how you got into ad tech from the beginning.
Absolutely. I've noticed that a lot of the guests on your podcast, and I think you've even mentioned, the vast majority just kind of show up in ad tech. They didn't plan to be in ad tech. It just kind of happened. I actually have a very different story. I very intentionally got into ad tech. I don't know if I'm your first guest or not, but to give you a very quick context, before MediaMath, I was always at tech startups. My career started actually at Universal Music Group. I got to work with great artists like Damian Marley and Amy Winehouse and Prince. But I really realized I did not want to be working at a major record label, did not see opportunity for young people. You really have to commit a lot of your life there before you make any real money. So I then went to a startup called TuneCore. I was employee number 9. We rose to become the largest digital distribution company in the world. And it was really disruptive. It allowed artists to upload their music, and the distribution company didn't take a percentage of the money they make, which is really cool. And then I moved on to a company called Order Groove, where I was employee number 9. So building a company again from the ground up. We were basically Amazon Subscribe and Save for anyone who wasn't Amazon. And both companies had a great exit, enjoyed both very much. But I had felt the startup grind, and I was really trying to figure out what to do next. My wife worked at WebMD at the time. She actually still does. And a lot of our friends worked in ad tech, somewhere at TapAd or Turn or all these different places. And they were all making a lot more money than I was, in the base salary. And they were having a ton of fun, and it was kind of contagious, and I wanted to be around it. So I ended up actually, believe it or not, cold applying to MediaMath for a director, position and landed it. But it was very intentional. And I have Kate O'Loughlin, CEO of Super Awesome, to thank for pushing me over the line to accept the MediaMath offer because I wasn't going to until we talked.
When you applied, how big was MediaMath at the time?
MediaMath was huge. I mean, I think we had well over 600 employees at the time. I joined in 2014. It had this feeling and vibe that it was kind of, at the time, going to be the next Twitter, the next Google. We had 3 offices in Manhattan that we were bursting at the seams of. We hadn't yet moved down to 4 World Trade, which was certainly not the right move, as we all know. But yeah, it was big and growing.
When you look back at the time at MediaMath in particular, you were talking about busting out of the seams, offices everywhere. How was it for you when things kind of took a turn? What was that experience like? And I guess, what did you learn from it?
Yeah, I mean, it was embarrassing. It was heartbreaking. I had spent 9 years of my life there, and I had a very large team. I oversaw the majority of our client-facing teams globally. It was excruciating, and we can go into more details. What I've learned from it, I mean, a lot of what I've learned is just my experience post, the MediaMath bankruptcy, and what's important, how I spend my time, and just that you really can turn a failure into great success. I've had the best 2 years of my career since the MediaMath bankruptcy. I like to tell people that it wasn't the exit that I was working towards, but it was actually a much better exit for me than it ever could have been otherwise. So yeah, things aren't always as they seem, and you really can turn a failure into a great success.
I mean, first and foremost, I don't think it was your fault. So if there's any guilt around that, I don't think that's anything that was in your control. And it just happened. I think it was a funding issue. It didn't go through as planned, and it is what it is. I mean, you've obviously turned this into a successful consultancy, working with Audigen, and you mentioned a few others prior to our call, but I'll let you talk about them. But what are you seeing now in the space? Now that the DSP is gone and you've become, independent, working with a multitude of clients, what are some trends you're seeing, and what are you seeing the direction of the industry overall?
So I do have to say, some of what I've observed, it's a total mindset change, right? Previous to the last 2 years, I've always been a W-2 employee, and as the vast majority of, us are, and you have a certain view of the world, right? MediaMath certainly shaped a lot of how I view, the industry, the right way to do things, the wrong way to do things, what I thought we were great at, what I thought our competitors were good at, and, being able to look at many different platforms, be inside a lot of different platforms. One, it was very validating. We were doing a lot of amazing, cool things that a lot of DSPs still are not even necessarily contemplating, nevertheless, you're executing on. What I've noticed is a lot of the things that I took for granted at MediaMath are still areas of improvement, which gives me a lot of breathing space to work with my clients. It also shows some areas where we can make what we have today work a lot better. In terms of where the industry is going, I do think SPO is still in its early days, whether you look at that from a quality perspective or you just look at that as changing share of voice from an extreme long tail of both domains and SSPs, where we can support, good publishers and good SSPs by consolidating, through SPO. I also think DSPs and SSPs still kind of suck at working together. That's a big focus of mine now that I'm out as a free agent working with different constituents in the space. And I also think we're on the cusp of next gen brand safety and fraud prevention.
So I love all of those. We talked prior. We were chatting for 15, 20 minutes prior. You had asked me a question, which is, do you think there are more SSPs or DSPs in the market? And I answered, for sure, DSPs. The SSPs have all been acquired, and I was wrong. Can you explain that to the people listening? How are there still so many SSPs? Maybe I was wrong, and I'm just had no idea. But I was under the assumption that there was hundreds and hundreds, 300 DSPs that are all integrated through, either direct or through BitSwitch and other solutions in market. But you actually corrected me and said there was a ton of SSPs. So I'd love to hear about that and how you're working with clients as it relates to SSPs and why that benefits them.
Yes, absolutely. So the quick context is I was catching up with, ex-coworker and good friend Ari Buchalter at DMS a couple of weeks ago, and we got into this argument of whether there were more DSPs, which was Ari's view, or if there were more SSPs, which was my view. We both tried a bunch of different chat GPT and other AI solutions. We got from the same prompt, the same AI agent, completely different, answers. We argued about it over text for a couple of days, and I finally pulled in Chris Kane, who I think the vast majority of the industry views as the source of truth. And he immediately wrote back, SSPs, of course, by a huge magnitude. There are over 200 SSPs still coming through the bid stream, and you could not get anywhere close to that number for DSPs. The only way you could even get past 100 is if you were considering, people who are curators or people who are built on top of, trade desks, APIs, who are not DSPs. To be a DSP, you need a bidder.
I'm still shocked. I don't even know what to say. I really was under the assumption there's more DSPs than SSPs. Is it because some are not clearly labeled as SSPs? Or is it just because there's just this huge long tail of SSPs?
There is a massive, massive long tail of SSPs. And this is one of the things that I'm, really trying to work at eliminating, with my clients. Not because I want, any company to go out of business. I went through that myself. It's a horrible experience, but it's just not good for the ecosystem. We talk a lot about a lot of problems in our space. And I think one of the foundational ones is the fact that we have misaligned incentives between the buy side and the sell side. But because of that, SSPs are gaming DSP bidders to try and get as many, bids from them at the highest price possible. So they lean into volume bias, right? The more bid opportunities that you send out to the bidders, the bigger scale they think you have, the bigger they think you are, the more likely you are to get the bid. So how does a publisher do that? They don't work with, 1 or 6, which I think you mentioned, you thought was already an egregious number from many years ago. It's something like 30 plus is the average now SSPs that a publisher works with. And you're talking about premium publishers, not MFA. These are premium publishers which need to lean into this game of duplicating their bids, bloating the bid stream to earn dollars from the buy side.
So they duplicate these bids, which increases the bid volume, which means they fill. I mean, what's the negative of doing that for the publisher? Or is it just more of a negative for the DSPs when it comes to QPSs and overwhelming the system? What can the publisher do better to not have 30, 35 SSPs plugged in, to only have a handful and then utilize those partners better?
I don't think that there really is much the publishers can do. I think that just like how, we as an industry really got rid of MFA, we did that through changing our buying behaviors, right? And so I see this as really a requirement of agencies, brands, and DSPs. If this is a buy side problem, we need to show SSPs and publishers that we care about this before they change. Because if you're a publisher and you go down and you stop duplicating your bids, you go down to a few SSPs, you will lose revenue.
And do you think that this has a big role to play with the focus around SPO, the focus around curation, and just cleaning up that supply path all the way through? Is that kind of the first and second step? What else can people do to improve the overall ecosystem and transparency that we have?
Absolutely. So there's a lot there, but I want to start with taking a quick step back. One of my clients is Butler Till. They are an independent agency. You've had Scott Ensign, Chief Strategy Officer.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, as a part of your show previously. I've worked with Butler Till for coming on 11 years. We launched their first programmatic campaign on MediaMath the first week I started. So I have an extremely long history with the entire business, the entire leadership. I've been working with Kimberly Jones, their CEO, for those 11 years. The reason I'm bringing them up and giving them this context is post MediaMath, bankruptcy, they were a huge client and partner of MediaMath's, and my relationship with them sustained that, and I am clearly still working with them. One of the primary things that we're working on is consolidating their spend across the supply. So when I first started working with Butler Till, they're across 3 new DSPs. They were clocking in well over 100 SSPs through those 3 DSPs that they were buying on. We are sub 12 now. That's a massive, massive change. So I do think it has a lot to do with, SPO. It has a lot to do with vetting your SSP partners, creating agreements with your SSP partners, papering them, setting your expectations of the inventory that you want, and leaning into curation, whether that is through a third-party curator like an Audigent, which they're certainly in the mix, or yourself as a brand or an agency, you need to start to traffic shape the inventory for yourself because of, where we got started in this conversation. You have all of these different publishers and all of these different SSPs playing games like bid duplication and bloating. It's very hard for a DSP to navigate that just for themselves. And to your point, managing QPS constraints, really the tools that you have now to make an impact is to set up deals, which inherently allows you to traffic shape that inventory.
So one thing that we were talking that you've been, engaged with me for years now. One thing that I've always kind of hated was the open exchange. I've really never been a supporter of open exchange. Do you think that the SPO and the curation play will eliminate the dependency on open exchange? And I guess what does that mean for the long tail inventory that's available and the unsold that's not available in market?
I'm right there with you. I'm not really a big fan of the open exchange. I don't really think that you need it anymore. Even if you're trying to find, a very niche audience, applying the data on the supply side and, curating deals to find those scarce audiences and hard to find audiences is an amazing example of, how curation can really help. It's a standard use case that I say over and over. Hard to reach audiences are best done by supply side, audience targeting and deal-based buys. So I really don't see an argument left for open exchange when you can, do one-to-many deals and have much more control over that, again, that traffic that's making its way through to you via the deal.
And I feel like from a publisher's perspective, if your inventory is premium, having it packaged, either you package up your inventory, have SSP package up your inventory to make it available to their market sellers, right? Or directly to your DSPs. But on the other side, I would just think that you want to know where every impression is firing. And if you've ever pulled an open exchange report and taken a look at the long tail, like it is ugly. Like what you see there is not normal. And it's almost impossible to track and log every impression that happens when you have 50,000 domains running. It's just like no system can really handle that you serve 2 impressions on a site way downstream. And so even for brand safety, it's so important for a buyer to be able to know where every impression fires.
And even taking your example of the long tail publishers, which is absolutely true. And again, I look at that as consolidating the spend to the publishers who deserve it, most, right? You don't need to be running on that many domains. The same is true for the SSPs, right? Now, I am working with, DSP clients, and I often show them an analysis that they are surprised by where, I'm like, okay, look, you have, 40 DSPs who are receiving 2% or less share of voice from you. You're not getting any value out of that individual 2% share of voice. Your clients aren't getting value out of that. And neither is the SSP. So
right.
Why don't we just cut it off?
The fear of the unknown, I think. I think sometimes they just keep it because they're like, well, let me keep it just in case things get better.
Yeah. Or there, and there's valid reasons, clients, SSPs have demand teams now. They are out brokering deals directly with buyers. The DSP wants to make sure that they can have, that inventory available for said client if they say they want to run that way. And I think you can do that. You just need to, throttle extremely and consolidate your spend to a core set of trusted, vetted SSPs and paths. And you can have those available if people want them, but you really shouldn't just be letting organic spend float to them at this point.
Taylor, you mentioned incentives, misalignment of incentives in the space. What do you think that is, if you could explain? And then also, like, how can that be improved? And what's the impact on misaligned incentives in the space? And what does that mean for advertisers and the ecosystem?
What I come back to is there's an inherent, dissonance between DSPs and SSPs, which I think has had a really poor impact on our overall space. We can go into a few examples. I remember, when I started in this space, people explained it as a very good, healthy dynamic, right? You want the SSPs to be taking care of the publishers, and you want the DSPs to be taking care of the advertisers and the agencies. But really, everybody wins if we actually hit or exceed the marketing campaign's goals, right? And the supply side is completely blind to what the campaign KPI is, if they're performing, if they're not performing. I remember when I first started in the industry, this really resonated with me. I was meeting with Triad Retail Media. If you remember them, they monetized all of Walmart, Sam's Club and others, owned and operated inventory and their audience extension, that early days of retail media networks. I was speaking with their leadership team, and this woman said, it really drives me crazy about programmatic, where we can get massive spikes of spend and we don't know why. Advertisers can just stop spending on us completely and we don't know why. And if we just shared information between the DSP and the SSP and even the pubs, we could all be optimizing towards the same thing. So I think it creates a lot of mistrust, and just that fundamental misaligned incentive creates all sorts of shenanigans in the market that we could solve pretty quickly if we just put the marketer KPIs in the middle.
The view of what's happening is so limited. I think no matter what supply side platform you use, and you start to dig down into who the DSP is, okay, who the advertiser is, okay, what is the brand that's running? Where is the creative? Like, you can dig down pretty deep, but you still have no idea. Like, you still have no idea, like, does this Toyota Corolla campaign end on the 5th? Are they trying to get people to go to their dealership? Are they trying to get people to just go look at their new model? What are they really trying to hit here? All you can see is the spend trend. And then you optimize on the spend trend. And some days you wake up and you're like, why did we drop this much? Oh, it looks like the Toyota campaign ended. Okay, maybe something else will replace it, because that was really nice to have that running for 30 days. And there was like, it's totally blind.
Yes. And imagine, the tech is there. We actually built this at MediaMath. We built it with PubMatic. We built this in partnership with Butler Till, even for very advanced pharma campaigns, which have lagging indicators like audience quality and script lift. I'm a huge champion of it. I would love for DSPs to share performance signals with SSPs and pubs where they are integrated directly, so that they can shape the inventory based on what they know is working for a specific advertiser in a specific campaign, not just, hey, did I get a bid from the DSP, yes or no, and how high was that bid? That's a very rudimentary way to do things, and I'd love for the industry to work towards doing that, because I know that also that it works, and I know performance increases, right? This is also a lot of what Audigent does, right? They ingest performance data from the DSPs, from their clients, and they optimize the deals based on that. That's the way that it should work. It shouldn't be just, did I get the DSP to bid or not?
From your perspective in the space, like as a consultant, as working with DSP and agency, with Audigent as an advisor, you get a really unique view. What is something from your viewpoint that maybe people would disagree on?
Well, I think a lot of people disagree with what I just said, right? And it's a lot of interesting, change management that I also do with a lot of my clients, because a lot of people on the buy side think, my bidder can just handle it. My bidder can just figure out what inventory it wants and what it doesn't. And they know the users that they want to target. And there's, again, a lot of mistrust. They think that if I share data with the SSPs, they're going to use that against me. And some of it is a fair skepticism, right? Like, the lines between, DSPs and SSPs are getting blurred. But part of this, you could say, is because I'm an optimist and I start from a place of trust, there might be an element to that. But, if you're integrated with 100 plus SSPs and you're not sharing any data with them, and you're not commercializing terms with them, and you're not saying what you want from them and what you don't want from them, to me, then you're in the worst place possible. Why not actually engage with some partners in a strategic way, create, ways of working commercial terms to set those rules, and then be able to do some cool, innovative stuff like bidirectional, data sharing and optimization. But so people definitely don't agree with, what I just said.
I find it kind of shocking, but I also get it. People get stuck in their old ways.
Absolutely. We're clearly at, an inflection point. There's one thing that I think back to a lot. There's this slide that, Chris Kane presents at every Jounce summit, and it shows just this flat or very little growth of the open internet. The only real growth that's happened in the open internet is, X coming into the open internet and Pinterest coming into the open internet. But when I look at, what's happening with AI agents, I actually very strongly believe that we can make this a new channel and or a new format for programmatic open internet. And we haven't had a new channel or a new format since CTV, right? And we saw what growth that brought. I was speaking with a few different C-level executives at DMS a couple of weeks ago on this very topic. I want to be at the forefront, and I want my clients to be at the forefront of enabling, let's say, text ads and new search ads within these AI agents. That's changing dramatically, and I think it's a very real thing, and we can make it happen on the existing programmatic rails.
So I'm not sure how I feel about AI, and this is more of a general question about AI in this space. Do you think that it's going to replace even the type of work and research that you do in the market? Like, I know that AI is being utilized for everything from campaign setup and targeting, for reporting. I personally think that it'll optimize someone like you. Like, it'll just be able to assist you with doing things faster. But what's your view on AI's role in job creation or even job elimination?
I won't pretend to have, a crystal ball by any means. I definitely do think, I think in some industries, I think of, a lot of like outsourced jobs like that you get with Fiverr. And I think a lot of those will be eliminated, I think. But within our space, I see a lot of opportunity. Like I just said, I firmly believe that we will be creating a new programmatic, channel and inventory and ad type with AI agent inventory sooner than maybe any of us think.
Taylor, thank you for being here. I wish you the best of luck, and thank you for all your support for the years.
Yes, thank you so much. This was awesome, and I hope to speak again soon.
Definitely, we will.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Ad Tech Godpod, a podcast for the people, about the people. Stay connected with me for more insights, trends, and interviews in the realm of ad tech. Don't miss out on the latest updates, so follow me on X, Instagram, and connect with me on LinkedIn. Don't forget, ATG Slack community has insights, networking opportunities, and jobs. Keep the conversation going and stay at the forefront of ad tech innovation.